Okay, let's start next session, second session. Let's welcome our lecturer, Mr. Patrick.
No, actually. It's actually Mr. Nolan. It's the other things that are difficult with Japanese. Because they can put san at the end of their first name or their last name, so you're never really sure which one you're using. Which then makes the same problem for them. They're not sure which is your first name or last name either. But just don't call me Patrick San, okay? It's the wrong one. It's not it. I just had some Russian members who had spent so much time with Japanese leaders, so they got so used to calling a leader San. So when they came to my region, they go, "Oh, Patrick San." I'm like, "You're not Japanese. I'm not Japanese. What's going on here?" Also, I appreciate, the welcoming me, but you already welcomed me one time. You don't have to do that again. I get embarrassed if people applaud. Also, one thing maybe Mr. Tasaka didn't mention, so you understand. To give lectures like this, I mean, if they're any good. If they're not good, just ignore what I'm saying. But it took many years of giving lecture. It started from, I was sent to a workshop site without warning to give a 7-day workshop. And then after that 7-day workshop finished, the people wanted to stay for 21 days. 21-day lecturer was busy. So I said, anyway, just keep teaching. I was about, I guess, maybe 3 years member or something at that time. I myself had never heard a 21-day workshop. In those 7 days, I had said everything that I knew. And I said, I don't have notes. I said, do you have the principle? Yeah, well, go ahead. So for the next 10 days, I had to give 4 lectures a day of 21-day level content just from the book. Sometimes life like that, but ended up I became main lecturer for many seminars, and even just in America, I would give lectures from April until October. Minimum 4 lectures a day, every day, nonstop. The record in America was 8 months, and 8 months with 1 day off. Then I went to Russia and I beat that record for 10 months. So I don't even know. I don't have a count. I've probably 7 days. I've given 50 times, and 21 days probably more than 30 times. So it's through this experience of very intensive giving lecture that I could develop lectures like this. So if you want to do the same, start giving lecture. And then I can retire. Yeah, right. You know what Father says to that? Did I retire? No, so you can't retire. So second lecture is going to be, it's related to the first. Second lecture is about growth and human responsibility. And it basically comes down to, okay, so how do we become God's true children? How do we fulfill, at least, starting with the first blessing? So we know that there's 3 stages of a growing period. Now, cover the first simple question. Why is there 3? Why not 5? Why not 42? The Divine Principle says that the universe unfolds and manifests based on mathematical principles. For those of you who did not like math in school, I'm sorry. God made math. So to not like math means not liking an aspect of God. Now you cannot like your math teacher, that's fine, that's understandable. But God made math. So anybody study something like physics? Like physics? Everyone's going to see this. I know that God and math go together, so math is everything. It really is. It's weird. I knew a sister from Estonia who did, I think, her master's, and she was studying the mathematics of a language. This was her major, mathematics of language. So there's math and everything. So we can infer one aspect of God's nature is mathematical. And how we come to number 3, it says God is the one absolute reality, one being, in whom dual characteristics interact in harmony. Therefore, he's the being of the number 3. So we already know that within God are these dual aspects, dual characteristics, subject, object, or internal, external, masculine and feminine. So there's 2. But God represents not only those dual characteristics, but also the union of them. That's what brings us to number 3. So that's why God is embodied by the number 3. Not just dual characteristics, but also the union of those dual characteristics. And also number 3 therefore represents wholeness or completion. And 3 is, majorly fundamental number, just if you look in the natural world. So a few examples. In the natural world, we talk about 3 kingdoms. It's the animal kingdom, mineral kingdom, plant kingdom. We also live in a world of 3 dimensions. There are 3 primary colors. Red, yellow, and green. Oh, wait, no, sorry. I always think in terms of driving, 3 most important colors you should know, red, yellow, and green. Because sometimes I think people don't know what these things mean. Has anyone, I doubt any Russian or former Soviet country people, any of you ever been to Georgia, the country of Georgia? Did you ever try to cross the street in Georgia? People in Georgia, I don't think they know what any law is, but they definitely don't know what traffic laws are. You probably heard about Italians being dangerous. Nothing. Italians, fast, yes, fast and crazy. But Georgians are just crazy. They think those lines in the road are just decoration. It means nothing. So I wish they would understand those 3 colors. Now 3 primary colors, of course, red, blue, and yellow. Red, blue, and yellow. Something like that. And also we say 3 points are needed for stability. So if you want like a table or something to stand, it's got to stand on at least 3 points. I mean, there's examples everywhere. If you ever studied, probably in any language the same. Anyway, when I studied in high school, English composition means writing. When you're going to write a paper, it has to have 3 points. I had the same, it was terrible. In high school, I had the same English teacher for 3 years. And she used to beat this into our head every semester, year after year, because somehow people were just too dumb to get it. It's called a 3-point essay. Writing composition, we call an essay. It should have 3 points. There's a beginning, then the body, and then the conclusion. And this poor woman, after 3 years with us, she was just miserable. Okay, it should have 3. 3, not 5, not 4.5, 3. And we went, what? This poor woman suffered from this. It's the beginning and the body and conclusion. And in the body, it should have at least 3 points in it. 3 points to explain what you're talking about. And we went 2, no, 3, 1, no, 3. If she had known this principle, she would have used this to, God himself is a being in number 3, you understand? God is 3, so your essay should have 3, you know. That might have helped. So these are the 3 stages, right? Formation, growth, and completion. I mean, simple way to understand. If you think in terms of, you know, man's physical growth, we start as child, then we come to adolescence, and then you become an adult. Adult means you've reached maturity. So that's the idea of, you know, those three stages. And we find this in everything. Now, one important point here that's mentioned in the principle, even though we're talking principle of creation, there's a, you might say, fall of man point that you can mention here. And that is this point in red. That represents the stage that Adam and Eve were at, the first human ancestors were at when they fell. Now for them, we're talking not just physically, but also spiritually. That was the spiritual stage they were at, but also physically. We call it the top of the growth stage. Now if you consider that man's physical maturity means, like, you know, I don't know how to say, can't say you become the best you're going to be and it's all downhill after that. Physical maturity is like age 21, put it that way. Anyone here who's 21 years old? Okay, you're 21? Okay. You're not getting any taller. To give you a very blunt example, you've reached the top, completion stage. You can shrink, but you're not getting any taller. Sorry. Anybody here younger than 21? Okay, you got time. You're also 21? Anyway. You can blame your parents for that, okay? Why weren't you taller? Look what you did to me. No. Just kidding, just kidding. But that's, I mean, one simple thing, one simple way to understand it, you know, in terms of your physical maturity, physical potential. By 21, you know, you're done. You can go horizontally after that if you want. So anyway, if 21 is like physical, you know, physical completion, the top of the growth stage means physically they're around age what? Around 14. That means around the age of puberty, when their bodies were changing, when they began to, if you want to use this term, began to become sexual beings. That was the age when they were tempted by Satan. So it all fits, even from that physical perspective. Top of the growth stage, not only spiritually but even physically, they're around the age of puberty, which would have been the only time that Satan could even begin to tempt them about this. Now, when we're talking about growing to perfection or developing, what should be developing? What are we looking to develop? And one thing we want to point out here is, okay, nature or our physical body, these things develop very simply. You know, you can't really say automatically, but in the sense of if you have the proper environment and the proper nutrients, then they'll grow, they'll develop. Your physical body or things in nature, it's not a difficult thing. But what we want to develop, what we need to reach maturity or perfection is something different. It's internal, it's our mind, our spirit. So to fulfill the first blessing, every individual must develop his or her potential and become like God. Become like God how? We're supposed to physically look like God? What does God look like? Yeah, I can't answer that one, can you? God doesn't have a physical body. He's got a physical expression of himself, physical aspect, everything. So we're not looking to physically look like God. We want to become like God in heart and in mind. So man must be growing closer to God in heart and in mind. We have to develop internally. And what also that means, talking about being children of God, means developing a relationship with God. We want to become closer to God. We're developing a relationship with God. This is what needs to develop during the growing period. Our heart and mind to become more like God, developing our relationship with God, so we can become true sons and daughters of God. So there are two things we need to understand in terms of that relationship with God. We have what we call the indirect and direct dominion of God. Now, dominion, probably in Korean this makes more sense. Dominion is a very strange word in English, and no one ever uses it. It's, the closest you get to something about dominion is dominate. And dominate is not a word you normally want to use, unless you're talking sports or, some other form of violence. It's not a friendly term anyway. You never want to talk about, dominating somebody or something. So dominion, how it really translates, it's talking about how God relates to man, or how man can relate to God, directly or indirectly. That's really what dominion is talking about. So, as nature and man are growing, during that growing period, we have what is termed as the autonomy and governance of the principle. Means that realm of growth, that realm of where we're all immature, that is being run by, if you want to say, run by the principle. Which, that still may not mean a damn thing to you. So put it simply, if you're thinking about nature, forget all the rest. You're thinking about nature. What is it that causes things to grow? What would most people say? What causes things to grow? What causes the earth to move? The planets to revolve? What is that thing that moves all this? What would most people say who don't know principle? Law of nature, or the force of nature. These things happen by the force of nature. The forces of nature cause this. The forces of nature cause that. Who is this guy, nature? Where does this force of nature come from? Well, everything comes from God. The force of nature has another term for us. It's called the force of principle. The force of principle is what moves everything, motivates everything in the universe to work and act according to the principle. Subject-object relationships that are found in the entire universe are guided, motivated by the force of principle. That's what tells them to make relationships like that. That subject needs object, positive needs negative, masculine needs feminine. That's a force of principle that's motivating this, and God behind that. So everything in this period of immaturity is moved by this force of principle to grow, to fulfill God's ideal, to fulfill its potential. Then we come into the realm of perfection. Perfect man, we say, is one in heart and will with God. And then, because of our relationship with God, everything else in nature comes into that dominion, into God's dominion. That direct dominion of God, through us, through man. So let me explain a little bit more about this. The one that we've already talked about a lot is maybe easier, is this direct dominion. Where are we as perfected people? So perfected men is one in heart and will with God. And the direct dominion of God there is what we call dominion of true love. Again, I don't like the word dominion. So what it means is God relates directly or completely to man through heart. The essence, most important, the fundamental way that we are relating to God and God relates to us is by heart. So as I said, when we talked about this perfected individual, he would not commit sin because he would feel bad as God feels. He feels what God feels. So that in this direct dominion of God, the things, that God feels in his heart, this person is feeling. And this person has such love for God. It's that love that guides what he does. So we say in the direct dominion, a person is motivated by the force of love or the force of true love. That's what motivates a perfected man. But we're not there yet. Right? Anybody there yet, by the way? If you're there yet, you really don't need to be here. We're still we're still downstairs. I'm not going to say you're in the basement. That would be like below. We're still in the state of immaturity, in the indirect dominion. So this is where we really need to understand, okay? This is where we're doing the growing. So how does this work? Problem is, immature man cannot relate directly to God's heart and will. Now, the way it's written, the principles, sometimes you can get offended, God is perfect. God cannot relate directly to man when he's imperfect. You're not perfect. I'm not talking to you, It's it comes across as that sometimes, God is perfect and you're not perfect. I'm sorry, you're not perfect. Go talk to somebody else. It's not quite like that. The idea is in the sense of, in that direct dominion, God can relate to us completely. We're one in heart and will with God. There's no separation. In that sense, you can say, with a perfected man, your heart is as big as God's. So when God pours all of his love out into you, you can receive it because your heart is as big. I've got an ocean-sized heart. God's got an ocean full of love to pour out to me. I can receive it. When you're immature, it means your heart ain't that big yet. Maybe your heart is the size of a coffee cup. This is the size of your heart. God pours out an ocean of love to you. How much do you get to keep? Just a coffee cup size. And you go, God, why don't you get me more? God, don't get a bigger cup. Nothing I can do about it. You can only, no matter how much God has in terms of truth, in terms of love, how much you can receive, it depends on how much you've grown, how much you've developed. So that's what it really means, in that God cannot relate directly, because God cannot relate completely. It's like a parent, you have all these big dreams for your son. You want him to become like this, and I want you to be this kind of person. You're going to do like this in the future, and you have all these big plans and visions, and you come to your 5-year-old boy and try to explain all that to him. Son, I want you to become a very responsible person in society. I want you to go out and serve other people, and I want you to be able to do like this and become like that. And he's going, can I eat now? Yeah, go ahead. Sakabe-san, have you had that experience of trying to explain something to your child and you just get that kind of blank look? And then you go, yeah, never mind. Nice. Daddy loves you. Okay. No point, And the other thing is, it's in terms of how we can relate to God. Now, in direct dominion, we're relating to God by heart, motivated by heart, by love, because we love God and we know that God loves us. For when you're immature, as children, of course you do, you love your parents, you have heart, but your heart is still not that developed. So even your perception of things is different. I don't know if you guys have this phrase in your countries or your language, but we used to have this in America before, the political correctness came, where if you spank your child, father would say, this hurts me more than it hurts you. Now, my father never said that because my father never used his hand. My father always used his belt. But even using a belt, if he said that, this hurts me more than you, I'm going, what are you talking about, man? How does this hurt you? I know how it hurts me. I can't sit. What are you talking about? A child cannot understand. Funny, ha ha ha, it hurts you more. Bullshit. I don't buy that. This child can't perceive it from a parent's side. Do parents want to hit their kids? Do you want to discipline your child? Do you want to punish your child? No. You don't want to do it. You don't like doing it. But in order to educate them, sometimes you have to. And you're tell your kid, okay, because you did that, you weren't supposed to do it, okay, now you gotta, stay in your room for all night. No TV, no cartoons, no ice cream. How do you think the parent feels when the kids go, Parents laughing, ha ha ha. I like to make you suffer. No. Parent feels like shit. And you go, stop crying, will you? Anyway, you go to your room and you go, shit. You try to hold it together while the kid's crying because you don't want to make him cry, But you have to do it to discipline him. And now, why is the parent disciplining the child? Because he's a dictator, he's a fascist, he's a sadist, he likes to make people suffer. No, right? Hopefully. Why is a parent disciplining a child? Out of what? Anybody? Love. Because you love your child, you want him to grow up to be the right kind of person, so he'll be happier in the future, even though he's bawling his eyes out now. So he'll be happier in the future. Out of love, the parent is doing that. The kid. Does the kid see this as love? Does the kid perceive this as love? No, actually he doesn't. Because he's immature. That's how it is. So in that situation, you can't relate, same as God, cannot relate directly with his will, with his plans, with his love to an immature person. So God relates indirectly. We call this the dominion of principle, because God relates to men indirectly through his word or his principle as a mediator. So here, actually, when we're talking about the autonomy and governance of the principle, one side of it is that force of principle, but the other side of it for man is the principle or God's word. We need that. That's the mediator between us and God. So God's word or principle as the mediator is what allows us to grow. Through relating with God's word, through relating to principle. That is going to bring us closer to God. Because the principle or God's word is an expression of his heart and will. It's an expression of his vision and his values. God expresses these things through his word, through what he teaches us. And as we relate to that, we unite with that, that's how we can grow closer to God. We come to inherit his heart and will as we follow his word. We come to inherit his vision and his values as we practice the principle. It's what brings us closer to God. And this is the exact same way as any child comes to inherit or understand his parents' values and ideals by following the rules and guidance that they give. So you've all experienced this, for better or for worse, or depending on how your parents guided you, and depending on how well you followed your parents' guidance, and depending on if the guidance was any good. But this is the same thing. As you're growing up, from your parents and from your teacher, basically from everybody, there's all these rules, right? Do this. Don't do that. Don't do that either. Don't even think about doing that. And if you do that, I'll take your head off. All right, that's what I say. But anyway, as a kid, there's a lot of rules, right? It drives you crazy. You can't do that, and you can't do this, and you got to do this by 5 o'clock, and you got to do this by this time, and my God, it's so hard. There's all these rules to follow. But those rules are not just random. They're not just for the sake of making your childhood miserable. They're for the sake of you growing in a certain direction. Those rules are an expression of your parents' heart, your parents' will. It's an expression of their vision for you. It's an expression of their values. And as you practice and follow them, you will grow. And I always remember, in my family there were 7 of us, 5 children plus parents. And I was the youngest. And then everybody goes, "Oh, wow, you were the baby. You must have been spoiled." No, because I had 3 older brothers. Therefore, if for any reason I was accidentally spoiled, they would make sure I paid for it. You know, he got that. We never got that at that age. Okay, take it from him. Or I pay for it in other ways, you know. I slept for about, I don't know, 7 years on a bed that was broken because my brother threw me on it and broke it and then refused to tell anybody. So you imagine that, you know, it was broken in the middle, so I had to sleep on like the front half of it. And no, my parents never knew until years later. Everybody moved out and my dad goes to, you know, sit on the bed. He goes, "Whoa! How did you sleep on that?" "Yeah, well, you know, I curled up into a ball and, you know." It's not like they threatened to kill me if I told. They just looked at me. Which, by the way, they inherited from my mother. You know, the kind of mother that doesn't have to say anything. You do something, she just looks at you. And you know, okay, I'll just go kill myself right now, Mom. That's all right. So anyway, my mother would have to go shopping for this humongous family, and she would go shopping once a week. And for 7 kids, you know, and you go to a supermarket with everything, and my mother has lots of coupons. So she'll come home with several bags of food, and it seemed like every time she came home, I'm the only one who's there. And in the beginning, I'd be there, sitting there reading my comic book. Very important, it's a very intense situation with Spider-Man going on, you know. And I'm reading this for the 15th time, but it's, you know, it's important that I read it until I know it by heart. And my mother comes in, and I go, "Hi, Mom," you know, and she's coming in with, you know, arms filled with bags. "Hi, Mom." She puts them on the kitchen table, and she says, "Patrick, can you help me with the rest of the bags?" I'm like, "No, but you know, I went and put it down and drag my feet outside, all the way out the door and out to the car. And by the time I get there, she brought everything in already. Because I took so damn long to, she's already in and out and in and out. I don't want to do this. And then I get there and there's no bags. And I go, "Mom, what'd you make me come out here for? There's nothing here anyway." Trying to read my comic book. So I was like that for several years, and I started to grow. And then it would get to the point where, you know, I'd be there reading my comic book, you know, Captain America, very important moment for Captain America. And my mother would come home, and I would see her, I'd say, "Hi, Mom," and I see she have the bags in her hand, and I would actually think, before she spoke, I would think, maybe I should help her. I'm not moving, of course, but I did think of it, which is a new thing for me. I'm not moving until she asked, on the off chance that she might actually ask my sister to do something for once, but no, she's got to ask me. And then after several years, I'm not going to admit how long it took, but finally it gets to the point where I'm waiting for my mother to come home. As soon as I hear the car come onto the street, I'm outside. Before she gets out of the car, I have bags in my hands. And of course, my mother's first word is, "What'd you do?" So, "What do you mean?" "Nothing." "No. What happened at school?" "What'd you break?" Because I was for many years, at least to me it seemed like for many years I was accident prone. I was afraid to get up in the morning because I was going to break something. It didn't matter what I did. Even if I didn't get out, I would break something, right? You know. I knew if I didn't get out of bed, they'd come out and find out that my bed was broken and blame it on me. So what'd you do? The next, what'd you do to your sister? So while I'm carrying the bags, my mother's going throughout the house to see what was broken, asking my sister, "Did your brother hit you?" "No, not today." Actually, I have only hit my sister twice in my entire life, and trust me, she deserved it. Calling the school. Is everything okay with Patrick? He didn't go to the principal's office today. And finally, after it was done, and I brought in all the bags and went back to reading Daredevil by that time, X-Men by that time, I suppose. My mother has realized that I have actually done this thing without her asking me, all by myself. And she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." She's hugging me and kissing me. "I can't believe you finally brought the bags in by yourself without me telling you 1,000 times. And then she gets on the phone, calls all her sisters, all 6 of them, and her mother, and calling them, "And Patrick finally brought the things in, and I didn't have to tell him 1,000 times." And she's baking a cake, and my brother's coming home. And says, "What the hell's... What, is it somebody's birthday or something? What the hell's going on?" And I said, "No, I just brought in the groceries before Mom told me to." And they go, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember." She gets excited about that for some reason. She did the same thing with us, Do you see the difference? Now, the other thing is, why would I do that? Why? Why would I go out, take my time, go out and help my mother with these things? Love. Out of love. It's not just because I know she wants me to do that. I've known that for years. That didn't help. Knowing the rules or knowing the expectations is not enough. You're supposed to, but you don't. You're not supposed to, but you do. What motivated me was love. Because I knew if I did it, it would make her happy. And if she's happy, I'm happy. If it's something that she wants, that's what I want too. That is like the direct dominion. See, when you're immature and motivated by the force of principle is all the time telling you that you should do something. It's all the time giving the sense that you should do this. So being motivated by the force of principle is the same as having that feeling that you should do good. You should do God's will. Motivated by love, you want to do it. Man feels that he wants to do good. You want to do God's will. Do you understand the difference between those two things? So that's the difference of indirect dominion and direct. In indirect dominion, you're still immature. You're still going, "I do it because I should. I'm doing it because I should. I know I should." And then you have the principle telling you what it is that you should be doing. God's law is telling you what you should be doing. But once you reach that direct dominion, you don't need anybody telling you anymore. That's why Father says you don't need laws. You don't need God to tell you what to do. You already know. I didn't need my mother to tell me to do this. I knew what she wanted already. Through those many years of relating to her through those rules and things, I came to understand what she wants. I understood her desires. I know what she wants. I know what makes her happy. And out of love, I'll do it just because. And she didn't have to tell me anymore. That's the kind of relationship that God is looking for and longing for with man. For those of you who are going, "Man, I hate rules. I hate rules. I hate being told what to do. I hate having always, you got to do this, you got to do that." I have an answer for you. Fucking grow up. If you would grow up, you wouldn't need someone telling you all the time. That's all there is to it. You grow up, You don't need it, because to be honest, from the parent side, I have this every day. Don't jump on the bed. Don't jump on the bed. How many times have I told you don't jump on the bed? 50 times. Thank you. Then why are you jumping on the bed? Well, you said don't jump on the bed yesterday. I thought that was just for yesterday. No, don't jump on the bed any day. And what are they doing? They're jumping on at nighttime. I thought you said day, night, whatever. Don't ever jump on the bed, ever. For the rest of your life. Okay? For every moment that you breathe. And I shouldn't say that, because then he'll be jumping on his bed, holding his breath. Next thing I know, what is he doing? He's going like this. I told you not to jump on the bed. I'm not jumping, I'm skipping. Do you think parents enjoy that? Do you think God enjoys it? By the way, has anyone ever read the Old Testament in the Bible? The Old Testament. There's certain chapters of the Old Testament. I think it's Numbers, Deuteronomy. There's certain chapters of the Old Testament that are all the laws that God gave the Jewish people to live by. I think there's about 452. Page after page after page of laws. When the sun is this high on the second day of the third month and a dog barks and your neighbor farts in your general direction, do like this. If it's the third day of the second month and the moon is this high and the dog barks and your neighbor farts in the other direction, do like this. I mean, it's just one after the other. If somebody did that on this day in this way, and, you had your eyes closed, then you make this kind of offering, Detail after detail after detail. God had to give so many, many laws because his children were so immature. He had to explain everything to them. They had no idea. I mean, think about it. Did you ever think about this? You guys know Moses? You've heard of Moses and the Ten Commandments? Moses had to go and fast for 40 days. I didn't want to think about it. Fast for 40 days. Go to the mountain, and God gave his revelation of the 10 Commandments. Don't kill. Think about this, okay? Now, if Moses had to go through 40-day fast, go up to the mountain, and God carved these things into stone the first time, gave these 10 Commandments, do you think these were things that they already knew? Would God go through all that for things that they already knew? No. But these people had to have explained to them, don't kill. You go, oh, man. What? But, I mean, what else is there? What else is there to do on a Friday night? We don't have movies. Don't steal, but don't commit adultery. No. Don't commit adultery? No. Wait, let me see those stones. That's why God wrote them in stone. 2 reasons. One, so that Moses could show it to the people and go, see, this ain't my handwriting. I didn't write this. I couldn't even. You see, I have no tools. The other is that in case people did not like those commandments and started throwing shit at Moses, he could use the stone to protect himself. Don't commit adultery. Get out of here. Not my idea. God plans for every contingency. God plans for everything. But you got to think about this sometime. Look at those 10 Commandments, and of course, practicing these things is another story. But understanding that these things, are right, don't kill, don't steal, honor your mother and father, you're like, no shit. Okay, what's difficult about this? But for those people, at that time, it was a revelation. That's talking about that kind of spiritual standard or artistic standard in relationship to God. But God was not happy to have to tell them this. And again, and again, and again, and again, and have to give them 1,000 rules to live by. God did not enjoy having to do that. He wanted them to grow up to the point where he didn't have to give them laws and rules and commandments. Where he could just, say, you should be like this. And they went, yeah, that's right. Okay, let's be like that. To the point where he doesn't even have to say it. We know already what God wants. That's where Father's at. That's very much the standard that Father lives at. Father does not wait for God to say something before Father does it. Father already understands what God wants and goes ahead and starts to do that. That's Father's standard. Now about our responsibility. So we've already explained. What is man's responsibility? All right, for first human ancestors, Adam and Eve, their responsibility was to keep the commandment, God's word. All mankind's responsibility is the same. It comes down to the same thing. Practicing God's word. Same thing. That's our responsibility. For us to grow up, for us to reach perfection, is to practice God's word. What he's given us, and practice that. Then we'll become the kind of people that we need to be. Why did God give man responsibility? I mean, besides the fact that, he couldn't grow up without it, it has a deeper meaning. Through this, man is given the opportunity to inherit God's ownership over creation. By us fulfilling responsibility, we inherit that position of owner of creation. Reason why is because we're, in practicing this, in fulfilling responsibility, in a sense, we're perfecting ourselves. And by perfecting ourselves, we're perfecting the rest of the creation as well, right? The rest of creation can grow and develop, but they can't fulfill their purpose until we do. They can't become the kind of things that God wanted them to be until we become one with God. And then through the relationship with us, they fulfill their ideal. They fulfill their potential. So we're perfecting ourselves, so we're taking a very central role, actually, in fulfilling God's ideal and fulfilling God's own dominion over creation. If we don't become one with God, God has no dominion over creation. Until we're one in heart with God, God can't enjoy a sunset. Until we're one in heart with God, God can't even enjoy a pizza. Doesn't know what it tastes like. God can't experience the world he himself created until we become one with God. And of course, without responsibility, you can't grow. End of story. Without fulfilling responsibility, you cannot grow. You could be taught everything, given the greatest wisdom. If you don't practice it, you don't grow. Without responsibility, you don't grow. I remember reading an article many years ago. This was back at the time when, I guess it wasn't, maybe it wasn't South Africa. I guess it was, at that time it was called Rhodesia. What is it now, Rhodesia? Zimbabwe? Yeah. When things were changing, and there were a lot of rich white people who were, had everybody else's money. And there was a guy, okay? They had so much money. This guy had lived in this huge house, and he had servants for everything his whole life. And he was living by himself. He had no family. Servants for everything. And then everything changed, and those servants said, fuck you very much. We're going to having our own life, and we have our own property. And then he became poor, and he had to go back to wherever his family originally was from, probably Holland or something, and then live on his own. Guy's 50-something years old. He does not know how to cook. He doesn't know what a pot is. He's never seen them. He's never seen the kitchen, because the kitchen was where the servants go. The food is cooked in a pot, brought out on a plate. He has no idea what these things are. Never washed his own clothes, never even chose his own clothes. It was put on the bed for him to put on. Guy's 50-something years old, and he can't do anything. What would you say if someone, even 50 years old, but he's, he can't cook, he can't clean, he can't take care of himself? What would you call this kind of person? He's like a child. He never grew up because he never had any responsibility. That's the extreme example. But it's that basic, No responsibility, you don't grow. Anybody goes, man, I hate responsibility. Okay, stay a kid, for the rest of your life. See how happy you'll be, Responsibility is the only way you grow. We may hate the word. You got to be more responsible. This is your responsibility. The R word. Responsibility. But it's a blessing for us. It's how we grow. And this is how we inherit. Now, the other thing that we have to understand, okay, how much is man's responsibility in fulfilling God's ideal? Means in terms of there's, God's responsibility and our responsibility. How much is ours? Well, if relatively compared to God's responsibility, you could say that man's is like 5% or 3%, or, actually compared to all that God has done, our responsibility is pretty damn small. But in order to fulfill it, in order to fulfill your responsibility in such a way that you qualify to inherit that ownership, you have to invest the same amount that God invested. So very simply, we would usually say, even though God's responsibility was 95%, God invested 100%. So even your responsibility is like 5% of that, you still have to invest 100%. That's a very simple way. But more than that, okay? God invested absolute faith, absolute love, absolute obedience into what he did. Especially when you're talking about his relationship in man and creating this world for man. He created everything for us. Everything else is for us. We're for God and everything else is for us. God did that with absolute faith that man would become what he hoped we would become. He did it with absolute love. Everything he did was out of love for us, even though it drove him crazy sometimes. And with absolute obedience, in fact, obedience to that love. Even though by logic, by reason, God might see, okay, man could screw up and all this could be a waste of time. Maybe, I should just invest a little bit first, see how man goes. And then if man's doing well, then I'll invest more. No, because who did God make last? Besides woman, yeah, I know. I know. What does Father say? What does Father say about that? Do you know? Huh? No. About women being created last. You save the best for last. Father said. What is most important is what's created last. But in terms of creation, mankind was created last. So it couldn't be that God's going to make some things, then make man, see if man works out, and then go and make more. No. Once he's created man, he's done. So in order to have an incredibly beautiful world that is dependent on what we do, God had to invest completely in everything else So it would be perfect when we finally reach perfection. So God invested everything with absolute faith that we would do our responsibility, absolute love for us, made everything for us, and absolute obedience to that love, that even though logically it would not be the smartest way of doing things, but out of love, he could not do less. That kind of investment God gave into his side. So even though our responsibility compared to all that is not as much, we have to invest the same. If we're going to become true children and inherit these things from God, we can't, we have no choice. We cannot do as much as God did. It's not possible. I can't go and create a world, a universe, here, I'm like God, and go and make a universe. No, I can't do that. But what we have as our responsibility in fulfilling those three blessings, we have to invest with the same amount. And then I can say to God, I in that sense, I'm worthy to inherit. I'm worthy to inherit these things. Because as you invested in me, I've invested in my responsibility. Now, this is why when you're doing your mission, whatever your mission may be, you want to think in those terms. I have to invest 100%. I have to invest with absolute faith and love and obedience. And then during mission, and when you have a leader or a central figure or something like that, you're reminded of this. Perhaps you're pushed to do this. Perhaps you're put into those kind of circumstances, to help you invest more, Late at night, keep going, Let's go all night, Let's stay up all night. Do this kind of investment in studying principle, and you read divine principle from beginning to end, out loud. Non-stop, except, for bathroom and, to eat quickly, and then read out loud. Have you ever done this? Anybody done reading the entire principle out loud from beginning to end? Oh, good, you have things to look forward to. And if nobody says we're going to do this, tell them, I think this would be good, and sometimes it takes until nighttime. Sometimes it takes overnight. So during your mission, during things like this training, you'll be reminded, you'll be encouraged, you'll be put into situations to invest like that. This is just practice, guys. This is just training for you to be able to make that same kind of investment for the rest of your life, especially family. Sometimes people will do this kind of crazy things and, forget to eat and forget to sleep to invest in their fundraising or invest in that kind of mission. But they don't make that kind of sacrifice in relationship with their spouse. In relationship with their spouse, somehow they can be really fucking selfish. That means your training didn't go very well. Something you didn't learn or you didn't understand, that this is not just, man, I can't wait till we finish this ILTP so I can go back and relax. You're not going to fulfill God's dream by going back and relaxing. When it comes to family, you have to be ready to invest even more. You think it was difficult to love somebody on your team? No, it's not. To love this person on your team, or love a team captain, or for team captains to love their members, which, by the way, is not easy. In case any of you guys who have not been leaders think it's easy, it's not. To love these people who, sometimes want to kill you and you have to push them to do difficult things, sucks to be a leader. But it's training for life. Because in order for you to love your spouse, you have to be able to go to that extent, make that kind of investment to the point where it hurts, to where it's hard. But anyway, you love this person. Anyway, you have to do this for them. For their sake, for the sake of your marriage, for the sake of the family. Once you have kids, It's even more so. You want sleepless nights? Have a child. So I don't understand why an MFT or why an ILTP we had to do these things overnight, or condition where we went so far and we didn't sleep or didn't eat so much. This is preparation for being a parent. Because no matter how much you want to go to sleep and how much you want your child to sleep, if they're not going to go to sleep, they're not going to go to sleep. And you know that you can't fall asleep while your child's awake. You do know that, right? If you don't want the house burned down, if you don't want things destroyed, if you don't want them to swallow something, because they swallow everything that doesn't move fast enough. No. My daughter's 1.5 years old. We go to the beach. My daughter sits down and starts to put sand in her mouth. Now, you would think, as an adult person, that you put sand in your mouth and go, "Oh, that's nasty, I won't do that again." Children don't think that way. They go, "This is an interesting sensation." And they just put more. Doesn't matter. If it fits, they'll put it in their mouth. Even if it doesn't fit, they'll try to put it in their mouth. And you think they can't swallow certain things? You don't want to find out the hard way. My daughter, my wife was just opening some cheap toy, and it had one of these flat kind of batteries that are like the size of a quarter, and she had it, put it down. My daughter went, I was going, "Where'd it go? Where'd it go?" I said, "It's in her stomach." What? It fit. Luckily, it was also small enough to come out the other side, but no relaxing with kids. It's gonna, you have to be ready to sacrifice. You have to make that kind of investment. And when you're thinking about their future, who they'll be in the future, you have to be even more concerned. You have to invest even more. So this isn't just, during, my mission when I'm doing fundraising, when I'm doing things like that. Yes, I want to do 100% absolute faith, absolute obedience, absolute love, get home, and it's over. We got people who go, "I can't wait to start my family so I can relax." What planet are you from? What world are you living in? It doesn't mean, I'm not saying it's miserable. It's effort. It's effort. It's investment. It doesn't happen easy. Your wife is upset about something, brothers. Your wife will be upset about things, and you will never understand why. But be sure it's something you did. It's always something you did. Don't bother asking her, because when she's upset, she's not talking to you. And of course, if you ask her why you're upset, what is she going to say? Because you don't talk to me. I'm talking now. It doesn't count. I'm not talking to you now. What are you going to do? You have to go beyond. Out of absolute love for my wife, I'll accept I was wrong, even I don't know what I did. And I'm ready to pay indemnity for it. I'm ready to, whatever she needs me to do for it. Get on my knees and apologize, whatever. Because I love her. And in the end, does it matter who was right or wrong? No. What matters is that we're united and happy. So who cares who was right or wrong? So you have to swallow your pride, which for brothers is a very large pill, about this size. And you go, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." "That's right, you were." "Yes, I was." Swallow it again. And out of absolute love and absolute obedience to the blessing and absolute faith that, what you're doing is right. All these kind of things. And to become, now this is just in family. That's just in family. If you want to be the kind of person who's going to make real changes in society, same kind of investment you're talking about. You want to be able to move society, move the nation in a certain direction. You can't do that just like in your spare time as a hobby, when you feel like it. The things that need to be done to change society or nation have to be done now or never. Not on when you feel like it. And not as much as you think, you might think that's enough. But what you think is enough might not be enough for those things to change. So you've got to go farther. It's not enough until what needs to be fulfilled is fulfilled. What needs to be changed is changed. You have to be absolute in that. I want to change this. You don't go, well, I tried, it didn't work. No, if you want to change this, absolutely, then you keep going and doing it until it's done. You want to change yourself. You don't try to change yourself. You change yourself. Means you keep doing whatever needs to be done until you change yourself. Because that's the way God invested into everything. That's the way we have to invest into everything. And what you do in things like ILTP or Formula Course, that's just practice. That's just training to get you used to doing like that. To get you seeing that, yeah, this is how it needs to be done. If I go until 99%, I don't make it. If I push myself beyond 99%, maybe, it might be 95. 99% is where you think, I can do this much. 100% is where you've gone beyond what you think you can do. And that's where things start to happen. That's where you grow. That kind of investment. Okay. All right. Any question? And it can be from this lecture or the last one. Either one is fine. By the way, suggestion: if during a lecture some question comes to your mind, question or comment comes to your mind, quick, write it down before it disappears. Yeah.
You said in the growth in human responsibility, the first phase, you said we physically don't look like God, but it says in Genesis, God created us in His image and likeness.
Oh no! What I'm saying is, it's not important how we look. I'm saying how we grow externally. That's not what we're concerned about. It means externally becoming like God is not the point. That's what I meant.
Externally becoming like God.
Yeah, that's not what we're concerned about. We're concerned about internally becoming like God. Externally we have no choice. You're gonna look like God anyway. Yeah. So it means even you're short, you still look like God, okay? Don't worry about that, So if anyone ever picks on you about being short, it's, I look like God. You got a complaint, you go talk to Him, see how you do. So don't worry about it. Anything? Any complaints from Masha? Anything?